when I saw like you debating Andrew Wilson, I'm gonna try to be as nice about this as I can. It seems you get bogged down in like philosophy talk. So like you'll like talk about Agrippa's trilemma. I understand he was doing like philosophy too. He's trying to like walk you back to like, oh, you're.
Just to be clear, the person who wanted to do a philosophy talk was him, not me. I wanted to talk about substance.
My only thing would be is like if you're gonna like debate like an Andrew Wilson, I wouldn't go with philosophy. I would try to like.
How do you not go with philosophy when they keep forcing the issue? Just
so like
to answer their questions.
Well, I wouldn't refuse to answer their questions, but like I'm trying to like think of this is like if he asked me like, okay, if I like think of philosophy like, okay, you believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think like people should be happy? It's like, well, I'm a normal human being. I think, I just want people to be happy. It's like, well, like, do you want like I guess I wouldn't say like a bad person to be happy, like doing bad things to other people. And then you're going to have to like say it's like, well, not at the cost of others, right? Like, and try not to get like too bogged down in it, I guess. Like, I would just be like, I wouldn't like avoid the question, but I'd try to bring it back to more of a like a practical perspective, right? So if he says like, why shouldn't I? It's like, well, why shouldn't I pursue Christian nationalism? It's like, well, if you pursue this, like you're gonna end up fighting and like killing each other eventually. Eventually, it'll devolve into that. Do you really like want that? And he's like,
why would you
yes.
assume it
like,
would devolve to that? Why would you assume it devolves to that?
Christian nationalism?
Yeah, why would you assume that it would dissolve to that?
Because it did in Europe.
Yeah, but this is America. This is America. Obviously, these aren't the same countries or nations.
We're not that different than Europeans. Like, we're not just like a different human animal.
Yeah, but the time in which it devolved was typically in times of monarchy. Why would you assume that in a democracy that we would devolve to that?
That's usually what happens in like nationalism. It devolves in like
usually
right-wing authority.
Usually, what happens? Just so you know, I'm being Wilson right now.
Well, okay. It is what happens, actually. You know what? You're right. It is what happens. It happens like pretty much 100%. It happens like 100%.
100% of the time. There's not a single time that I could look and find where a religious nation maintains. What about, for example, like you're just doing this fallacy where you're saying like because things eventually fall apart, that they like, must fall apart, right? The Byzantine Empire existed for hundreds of years and didn't have a ton of like religious internal turmoil and fighting. It
did have. What do you mean? The Byzantine Empire 100% had like turmoil. Like, what do you mean? Like,
yeah, turmoil, but not sufficiently that it fell apart.
It did fall. What do you mean? They fell to the Ottoman Empire
eventually, but that like, of course, you're just gonna say America's better because it's just present. How is that a good argument? America is gonna have this because how is that a good argument? All empires will fall eventually.
Well, I would say like we're not technically an empire; we're a union of states. So, like, I don't think like America is going to fall anytime soon.
Do you think America is going to fall or not?
I think it's going to be a very, very, very long time. I don't think it's going to like fall as it's
just going to last forever. America's going to last forever. It's never going to fall or be taken over. It's just this is it. We're at the final form of Earth and nations.
I mean, it's pretty like practical. Like at this stage, like I don't see like how America is gonna like fall apart unless state rises up against state and we have like a civil war again. But I don't think we're gonna have a civil war if we keep our.
I think we could probably agree. We've got all of history to show us that every nation falls eventually, right? And that's been pretty consistent throughout history.
Well, it changes. I mean, I don't think America's going to fall apart. Like, we're pretty like dominant right now. Even like we can usually settle our differences. The only time we can't is like if we have like very, very far right-wing nationalism, which is what's coming, and that's what's like harming our democracy. I feel like, and I think that's like a kind of like a chink in the armor.
Okay.
But I guess like when I would like argue with Andrew Wilson is like, well, I want to do like far right wing nationalism or like far right wing Christian nationalism. And I was like, well, okay, if you want to do that, we're going to have to like go to war. Do you really like want to do that? I don't think like people are going to sign up to like kill their fellow Americans.
He's just not
over
going to grant
something.
you that it's obvious that we're going to go to war. He's never going to grant
Oh,
you that. You're going to have to fight for your life to prove that.
Like when we see like, I guess like through history, like we can see when Christian nationalism was a thing, like people fought over that like all the time. Like I'm thinking of, like the Catholic Protestant wars, the like Catholicism versus Orthodoxy, which actually led to the downfall of the Byzantine Empire, by the way, because they split and they got sacked by the Crusaders.
Yeah. So
I'd just,
okay.
like,
So
point
your
to
feedback
that.
is, I shouldn't do philosophy. One of our topics was philosophy. Literally, one of the main prompts was a philosophical prompt. It was my moral system.
Yeah, like the part of philosophy, like, so for me, like philosophy should be useful in like helping me be as happy and healthy as possible. I would go to where like, hey, these philosophies seem not to work because they seem to eventually get conquered or die, or like we have
Philosophy
new
isn't a nation.
philosophies. Well, I mean, nations are led by philosophies, though. I would say like 100%. I would say.
So do you think a nation and philosophy are like the same?
I wouldn't say the same, but like a nation is led overwhelmingly by philosophies, and like if a nation's philosophy changes, I would say the nation changes almost entirely, right? So if we look at,
But that doesn't mean it's not the nation anymore, right? Like a nation can change it. Like China has had massive ideological shifts over time, but it's still China, even though it has had different ideologies and philosophies.
right, but those ideologies and philosophies either like suited them or like held them back, right? So like we could say like the Ming Dynasty, like their philosophy was like almost, I think it was Taoism. I'm trying to like think of the Chinese philosophies. I can do like Western, but Eastern's kind of like hard to remember. But like
Sure.
Western philosophy has like gone through many changes, and I understand like they're the same nation, but they operated like way differently. So like,
Okay. Sorry.
I
So
would just say,
how does this relate to, you think I did a bad job because I talked about philosophy with Andrew Wilson, even though making him look silly on philosophy is probably the most potent way to debate him, because that's all he wants to talk about is philosophy. I can't even bad faith you enough like Andrew Wilson does to force a philosophy conversation. He will basically always try to force an epistemic or philosophical conversation.
well, I just say like I'm not having like this epistemic like conversation if you're not willing to
Then he'll
go
go,
into like practical.
You haven't seen people do this? Then he'll go, so what, you just don't know how you know things? You don't know how you know things? And then you go, no, I know how I know things. He goes, how? How do you know
Well,
that
I
you
would
know
go
things?
to like the reason of science at that point, though.
How can you trust science? Is it just your mind?
Like, I wouldn't say it's just like, how can I like trust science? Is like, I understand I'm trusting my senses to give me information.
Oh, your
but
senses.
that's like,
So it's just all up to your mind. So it's all just subjective. Facts are just subjective.
subjective to the human experience. Yes.
Okay, so facts don't actually matter. So your science doesn't even matter, because if my mind observes something else, then you can't tell me that I'm wrong.
I can't tell you that you're wrong. I would have to use like a reference for both of us. Right. So let's say me and you both think this wall is 10 feet. Or you think a wall is 10 feet. I think it's 11 feet. I can get a tape measure out and we can both see.
How do you know the
that
tape
this
measure is
wall
true?
How do I know the tape measure?
Are you saying the tape measure is the objective thing here?
Yes.
So do you believe in
yeah,
objective or subjective reality?
That's I'd say subjective reality, because like you're going to have to.
Okay, so you can't actually know. It's just subjective. It's just up to you whether or not you think the ruler is true. You know, you're just trusting your senses and the senses of other
I am
people.
trusting the ruler. You have to trust something at some point.
You have to. You have to trust something because it's what, objective?
You do have to trust something. Yeah,
because it's objective. So you agree with me actually that epistemically there are objective facts that exist outside of our mind. Interesting. So which is it? Are you a subjectivist
or
believe
that there are objective facts outside of your mind? What are you saying? I didn't even say that.
Is a ruler 30 centimeters long, whether is that true outside of your mind? Or is it only true because you perceive it to be true?
I guess it's only true because I perceive it to be true. Unless I have
so if somebody perceives it to be differently, then it could all be different. Gotcha. Great. So I just live in a different reality than you. That's fine.
A little bit, like your senses may be different, and so you kind of do live in a little bit of a different reality than me.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because it's all subjective, right?
It is subjective, but like,
see,
I say we could agree mostly on like.
See how fucking retarded this is? Yeah, I'm doing the Andrew Wilson thing. I obviously don't. I wouldn't engage with you ever like this. I'm not retarded.
Like I guess like if he's gonna like do that, I'd be like, do you actually like want to like debate if like philosophy, or are you gonna like keep doing this weird? I guess like that's what I would ask. I wouldn't like. I guess I would go down and then you go,
yeah, I would like to debate philosophy. I'd like to know how you could possibly make claims about anything. I want to know what your epistemics and what the grounding of your epistemics are. Why would I take anything that you say for granted? I guess I would argue
epistemics with him. Like it's like
you want to talk to me about science? Is science not kind of somewhat built on epistemic presuppositions?
Well, it's. I guess it's built on our senses, right? I understand that, but
subjectively or objectively?
I guess what do you mean by that?
Subjectively in the mind, or objectively exists outside of your mind?
Exists outside of your mind.
Oh, so now you're a moral objectivist. Welcome to my side, I suppose.
I didn't even say that. I was
see how retarded this is? Seconds. Yeah. This is why I hate taking fucking debate advice from people who have no idea what they're talking about.
I just like, I don't know. I try to force him into some sort of like, can we like actually talk about like how philosophy has like influenced history and like what best serves humanity, instead of like objective versus subjective, which is like the most retarded thing. Because like that's a hell of a lot better like debate to me, rather than like
I can assure you there is a million things that would be more enjoyable to debate than anything Andrew Wilson tries to force. But the issue is that when you're engaging with a bad faith actor who constantly falls back on logic and like using like presuppositionalism and all this like Phil bro shit, the best way that you can prep and dumpster him is being prepped on that stuff, because if you're not, he will make you look silly. It's dumb. It's fucking retarded, because of what actually happens when I debate people, for example. I actually do believe in scientific realism. I think there's objective fact outside of us. I don't believe in subjectivity. Like, I'm not an anti-realist, right? And so the issue is when I debate you, I'll just grant your suppositions of the world. I'll grant you subjectivity, because you and I can at least agree that science is something it's doing something, right? And so I'll just engage with you on the substance of science, because I'm willing to grant all of the foundational axioms and worldviews that even you probably don't know to vocalize that you have, because I know that like it's probably based decently reasonable and you've gone to school and had an education, and we all kind of have the basic same epistemic systems of like the Cartesian thinking, that I'm just fine to grant that. But what you're telling me is I'm a bad debater with Andrew Wilson. I did a bad job because I engaged in philosophy, and I've demonstrated to you extremely quickly how it is impossible not to, which is why it's most effective. I don't think I did a perfect job. Like, I would give myself a B in that debate. I think he got some good swings in. I got some good swings in. I luckily got all of the good clips. I don't know if he's gotten any good clips out of it, so that's a big W for me. But like, I wouldn't look at my performance and go, this was perfect, right? I think my language around Agrippa's trilemma could have been improved for specifically preparing for a bad faith actor. But yeah.
I guess like, I didn't like mean like such a like bad job in like a very negative way. It's just like the only critiques I'll just try to pin him to like history, something like we can actually like agree on. But he does this weird, like I can see where you're coming from, is like he does this weird, like, we're not going to debate history. We're going to debate this weird philosophy of like are we in a vat of goo right now or not? And I'm like, I couldn't tell you.
You know the other shit that he does that I've realized in like looking back? He'll just make shit up, but he says it so confidently. And I'm like a pretty like probably my biggest weakness in that debate was doubting myself. That was my biggest weakness. There was multiple points where he would he made a bunch of shit up about fucking tanks. He was just so confident about science and tanks. And I should have inverted his asshole on the tank shit. I should have made Brian look it up. I should have made Brian look into whether or not efficiency is an essential part of science. Sure, but the reason why I didn't is because I don't invert anyone's asshole on almost anything, because I'm a good faith debater most of the time.
No, the invert his asshole. What do you mean? Invert his asshole.
Yeah, but the issue is that I'm training myself in a debate style that I think is worse for the world and worse for thinking.
It's not worse for the world. What do you mean?
I think if more people debate like Andrew Wilson and not like me, it's worse for the world.
That's not debating like Andrew Wilson. Bringing up like, hey, the Nazis fucking lost. Isn't that like kind of a...
that wasn't the argument. If I said, "Oh, bro, the Nazis lost," he would have been like, "Yeah, of course," but that has nothing to do with whether or not like a fascist regime versus a Western liberal regime can create like incredible things. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't, because the entire world was against Germany, fucking obviously, right? And so what I should have inverted his asshole, and I should have been meaner. I should have been meaner. Like, for example, when he said the Sherman tank was only good because of the Rolls-Royce contract, I was like, that's not fucking true. Because he was saying even the parts of American technology that was good is because of German fascist technology. He just made that shit up. I looked it up after and I was like, I've literally never heard of this. I don't even think that's true. I don't even know if we could have worked with Rolls-Royce because we're at fucking war with them.
Developed in England.
He made it all up. He just made none of it's true. He just made that shit up, and I should have pushed him on that. And that's true that with bad faith actors, I need to learn to be more nasty, but that isn't like some failing of me as a debater, right? It's that somebody is taking advantage of a good quirk about me. And so I am going to grant that there are areas I could have been more ruthless on and I would have had more optical W's with. I can totally grant that. But the areas that I like, the criticism of you shouldn't gone into philosophy with Andrew Wilson is not the criticism. Like, there are criticisms of my performance, and I think I'm decently well aware of most of them because I've analyzed my debate a fair bit, but it's not doing philosophy with Andrew Wilson. In fact, I am the most set up to most embarrass Andrew Wilson in philosophy. In part, based on his fucking intro, he probably knows this. I know philosophy better than he does. He's just better at word games than I am.
I guess, like, if he ever engages in, like, reality or like that, you need to, like, push him. But secondly, the philosophy of the Nazi regime 100% led to their downfall. Like, if you don't think that, you're just wrong.
The philosophy is
of Nazi Germany, 100%. That 100% led to their downfall.
That's not what anyone was talking about. It was about comparing and contrasting innovative capacity of different types of regimes. And there's an argument to be made that the fascist regime was highly innovative, because it actually was highly innovative in at least military technology, and yet America was more innovative because it was liberal and Western, was my argument.
Right, but that means that it's not as innovative, right? So wouldn't you want the liberal philosophy rather than the fascist philosophy?
I mean, God bless Walter. I don't think... I appreciate you trying to give me debate criticisms. I don't think these criticisms are it. There are criticisms to make of my debate with Andrew Wilson, but I don't think it's don't get into philosophy. And I appreciate you coming in.
All right. See ya.
Thank you. Nerd.
I had to hit it again. Okay, hello.
Hi, sorry about that. All right, you want to talk about, let me pull it up.
Pronouns.
Pronouns, and if I'm still against enforcing them. Obnoxious first question is, what do you mean when you say enforcing?
So I'm sorry, I'm totally new to you, to the stream and everything. YouTube just promoted it, and I was like, oh, let me look up stuff about this person. So I found.
That's so cool. Well, welcome to the stream. Okay. That's really cool of you coming in. Wait, so you don't know what I think?
Hello.
Wait, when you say still against enforcing them, do you know what?
Yeah, so I found a video on your YouTube history from 9 months ago where you were saying that you think, I think the wording you used was forcing people to use certain pronouns was the bad move. And so my understanding of that is kind of like, because you were saying like it's a nice thing to do, but it shouldn't be. The only thing I could really think of is to summarize it as enforcement.
Yeah, probably the better. Do you know what's? I'm going to use a really esoteric word here. Do you know what supererogatory means?
No.
Okay, it's like you're not just doing like what's expected. You're going like above and beyond. You're doing like something extra nice. Like helping the grandma cross the street isn't like the moral expectation. It's supererogatory to do. It's a good thing to do.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like, I would say the minimum of pronouns is doing your best to engage with them. And then if somebody is really intense and annoying about them, like if, for example, they use really weird ones, I think it's supererogatory to engage in it and not necessary. And maybe sometimes not actually morally good at all. But yeah, it would depend on the context.
Okay, so is that your position in like a general like person to person, or is that also like in terms of, healthcare services and such?
Healthcare services. So I'm very for people being able to change their I actually think that like lots of health stuff should have gender and sex. I think that that's just going to be the most informative, and I just wish we would update IDs. And so I think people should be able to absolutely change their gender. In the case of changing sex, totally fine with it on passports. On medicine, that's where it gets tricky, mostly because I would hate for a trans person to go in who's unconscious, who has no loved one who can comment. Let's assume they're aggressively passing as well, and they're starting to get treated, and they're assumed to be a man, and it like a male, and it is a female, and they have specific like medication needs that are going to be responsive to, for example, different hormones that would be affecting a female body.
Yeah, I would think though that if you're going to a doctor's office, they're going to have a lot more information than just a single identifier of male or female.
Well,
right?
I said
like
an emergency
somebody with
situation.
Swyer syndrome or whatever,
Well, I'm assuming an emergency situation. So imagine somebody's like in a crash. Nobody knows who this person is. Maybe they don't have ID. Maybe they're like a pedestrian that just gets hit. They're just by themselves and they're unconscious. In this type of situation, having ID that has like sex and gender, I think would be really like invaluable. So like maybe a driver's with both or something like that. I'm open to what that would look like. I'd probably talk to the trans community about like which IDs are actually pertinent. What IDs do you carry on you so that in an emergency situation it has utility?
Yeah, sure. And that's going to be like a thing you have to engage with community about to figure out. I'm not going to try to answer that question either, right? Like, I don't know. But in terms of if I go to my healthcare office right now, in the last year, they just started asking for pronouns, right? And so like, I would assume that most people who have a scientific background, like you were just talking a lot of philosophy and really made me want to talk about subjectivism, but I would assume that most people would be like, if it's a matter of like you're in the classroom or you're in a medical facility, not using someone's preferred pronouns is
shitty.
Because that's a level of discrimination, I think.
I'd like shame that person. Like I wouldn't want them fined, but like so for example, if I'm in a social space with a trans friend and I see somebody accidentally misgender them, I'll usually just like lean over to that person and like catch their and be like, hey, just a heads up, it is like whatever the correct pronouns are. If I see somebody intentionally misgender, like say some old boomer is intentionally misgendering, clearly a trans woman just walking around in life, I'd probably say something. I'd probably try to shame that boomer because like you're just being mean. You're just like being mean, like targeting a random stranger. But there are going to be situations where I might be more open to using or not using the pronouns. Like this is where it gets into like the very contextual
super
situations.
Neopronoun and
I wouldn't fine people for it. I think fining people for it is just like not good.
Yeah, so that's kind of where my conversation, where I wanted to go with it is. So again, if we're talking of like general people out in the world, people are going to be assholes. That's just going to happen, if we try to find people for being assholes, we're creating a whole another situation. But in terms of like a medical professional who, plausible deniability or whatever, like continues to refuse to use the proper pronouns for a patient over multiple sessions and so on. Like, I feel like that
would be like an ethical violation. Like if you're refusing, again, it's the same thing. Like if I'm a woman, let's say it's not quite comparable, but it's analogous. I'm a woman, I'm in my healthcare, and my healthcare professional keeps on being like rude. Like say he keeps on like calling me like the hoe or something like that. So he just keeps going, which I know it's different. It's different because in one case it's an insult, in the other case it's like, it's almost like like when you're not using somebody's pronouns, it's insulting, but it's more so subversive. Like you're intentionally being subversive to piss that person off. Whereas calling me a hoe isn't subversive; it's just insulting. In both instances, I can file an ethical complaint. And I think that's like the correct steps. I think if a doctor is intentionally and knowingly refusing to use your pronouns, you should file an ethical complaint. But I would hate that you could like call the cops for example, or something like, or like some version.
Yeah, no. Yeah. I totally agree with you. That's kind of what I want to distinguish is like
through fiat. When I say enforcement, I mean through fiat.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. Yeah. We're on the same page.
Okay.
Can I just really quickly touch on the subjectivism thing? Because I find this is a super interesting part of epistemology.
Just to be aware, though, I was being bad. I was being Andrew Wilson. I was not saying any of my positions. Okay.
I find it super interesting because in the argumentation, like, because you were saying to the last caller, you know, like I can make a whole bunch of assumptions about, you know, what assumptions we make, how we live our lives, whatever they come to. Science is, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I accept the idea that there's an objective, you know, rule or standard outside of whatever. I always find the whole subjective-objective debate a huge, like, red herring or like a distraction because, you know, there's never going to be a solution to the problem of solipsism, right? Like, it's just, you have to just make assumptions. And so I always find it funny when people want to argue on that level because it's like, okay, well, kind of like you ended up saying at the end of the debate, what really matters here
is I get to do the inverse. Yes. Sorry, keep going. I get to defend moral objectivity with the granting that Agrippa's trilemma is true, which is essentially like that we can't solve Agrippa's trilemma.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Because I mean, yeah. So you would be defending the objective position here. So
yeah, I would say I engage in dogmatism, and I believe in moral objectivity. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So like, why does it matter? First of all, like, because the only thing I can see anybody making a point of it is they're trying to make some sort of theological argument or you know, deistic argument that like there must be some sort of external source that provides truth. But then you still get into like, okay, but then how does that source communicate to us? You know, and like, how do you know it's communicating to you? So it's always just like,
sure.
Let's
why does
actually
it matter?
deal with the problems.
I would say in most of your life, it doesn't matter at all. I think the only areas where it matters is like it builds upon, it's building upon the foundations of how you think and engage in the world, right? Like one of the most important things, this is something, have you ever heard of a moral fictionalist?
No.
Okay, they're like a form of anti-realist that pretends that morality is real because they think the fiction's useful. And so my biggest critique of any moral system, if I'm engaging with a good faith interlocutor, is what's it doing for you? Because if your moral system can't be used as a guidepost to determine whether you're treating others well or acting correctly, I don't think it's very useful. And the moral fictionalist has a very hard time, at least the moral fictionalist I was debating at the time, I'm sure that there were more sophisticated ones, might have a really hard time doing that. I actually think there are anti-realist positions upon building how you morally conduct yourselves. But the main reason why I care about like the philosophy of morality is because I use it pretty regularly to try to think about my actions and how I should condone myself, right? Like when I'm doing the tension of free speech versus harm, right, on a platform of social media, it's an ethical, moral question of pluralistic competing values, and I'm using my moral system to come to it. So is it that important? Not to the degree that like all these autistic Phil bros act like it is, but it's important insofar as like being able to at a core level explain why you believe what you believe, and hopefully those convictions are deep enough because you've thought through them sufficiently that you act principled when the moment arises.
Yeah, but why do you need objectivism for that in any sense?
You don't. You can do it with subjectivist.
That was my point. It's just going to be like, well, I can accept that like my standards or my understanding of reality is totally different from somebody else's, and still make what I think are convincing arguments under a framework that I hold that I think they probably have a lot of similarities to. And if it turns out they don't, well, at some point you end up with who's got the bigger rocks. But like until that point.
So one of the arguments I would make as the objectivist is I would say, my system's better. My system leads to better outcomes. It's more true. My system is more true, which means that I will more reliably and predictably get better moral actions because I believe that morality exists outside of me, for example. Right? That would be one argument I would make to it. I'd have to make the case for it, but that would be like, why does this matter at all? Right? Is that in part, I think my answer is better because it's easier to follow. Frankly, I think it's way better because it's easier to follow. But also, I think like when we get to critical junctions of ethical weighing, whether something is literally true or not may actually be the difference between the course of action that we take. And my system is in line with intuitions.
Is that something you believe, or is that your devil's advocate?
No, this is something I believe. I think my system is easier to follow. It goes better in line with intuitions. And my system also gets to demand and insist against nihilism.
Sure. If it's true.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. But yeah,
But your system is harder to follow. It's less in line with your intuitions, and it can't insist against nihilism as well, which is why I think yours is worse. We don't know which is true, capital T true, right? In the same way, like as a Christian, I think God is true, and you're like, I don't think he's true. And like at the end of the day, who can prove it? Neither of us, right? It's metaphysical. Yeah. Fuck that shit, right? Fuck that noise. But like that doesn't mean that the belief in the thing is now meaningless because you can't fundamentally prove it at like a in a satisfying way.
I mean,
you can't fundamentally prove anything.
Yeah. So I would go to like an analogy for this of like, we make certain scientific assumptions based on, theory as best as we investigate it. And to be real, it's not actually theory based as we investigate it. We're believing somebody else who's believing somebody else who's, standing on the shoulders of giants and whatever. And like, I don't think that it makes my position worse to say, yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of assuming because my life experience, blah, 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 blah. And I don't have to pretend that I think that there's some objective truth that all this is pointing to, as long as I can just still treat it as so, and it works out in my daily life and it works out with other people, and we're still doing as much investigation as we can. So yeah, I agree that it's not as intuitive. It's not simple and concrete, and it doesn't have a sense of like objective force, but I just think it's more honest, I guess.
I think I'm just as honest, frankly. Like I think I own my dogmatism and stuff. I don't think I'm dishonest in like my belief system. I just think that objectivity is true, right? Like I think that there is objective moral fact. I think there's objective scientific fact, right? And so like, fuck, you had said something. Oh, that I can't remember now that I wanted to respond to in that little. I don't remember
the steps between my belief that like something scientific is true, but it's not actually. I'm not actually stating that I think the thing is true. I'm assuming from somebody who's standing on somebody else's shoulders, all the theory and everything, and I'm just like, this works out in my daily life.
Yeah, so like it works. It works. It's more honest. So it's like functional, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I like functionality and functionalism, right? So if things are defined by the function that they serve, right? Which is how I like to define things, frankly. I think it's the best way to define things and understand things. Are you functioning as a moral realist who believes in objective morality? You think it is objectively true that murder of an innocent is wrong, regardless of the mind observing or thinking of it?
No, I don't. I don't think that.
Okay.
I think there are people who can genuinely have a sense that murder of an innocent is totally fine, and like from their mind, from their observing position, like that's true for them, and I can't assert that it's not true from my mind, from my perspective. I can only say like I don't agree with you, and if we come into conflict, I'm going to fight for it. I'm going to fight for my position, which is the position that from my life experience is the position that most people hold, but that doesn't mean that I can assume that like it's necessarily true.
Do you act though as though it's true? Your moral
I would say no, but it's a very nuanced thing, because my position is like,
you don't act
regardless of whether it's like objectively true or not, because I'm saying like I don't think that there is any objective truth. The fact that so many people agree on this same thing.
Hello, you did not get cut.
Hi.
I think you DC'd.
Oh, my mic is too hot, somebody said.
Yeah, it might be. I'm not sure if that's what led to you DCing or not, to be fair.
Okay, well, I'm stepping back here. Sorry. So what did you last year? I wanted to finish the conversation, but I also don't want to take up too much time.
Yeah, no, all good. Basically, like, do you feel personally justified when you take a moral action, when you take moral objection with certain actions? Like, when you say murder is wrong, do you feel personally justified to say that?
Well, sure, of course.
Okay. And then my next question is like, do you act upon this, right? So if you saw somebody acting out a murder, you would intervene, right? You maybe as a jury member would act and find that person guilty and condemn them to jail or whatever. Would you
Of course I would.
Would you dispassionately advocate against the enslavement of a certain race in your country?
Not dispassionately.
Right. Yeah. You would probably feel it in your bones that you were on the side of righteousness, right?
Sure.
But if you admit that it's merely a preference, you have to acknowledge that it's irrational that you're being passionate about these things.
No, I disagree there.
Why?
I think you can be fully passionate, fully engaged, try to force, I don't want to get too much in the weeds.
But it's not based on anything. It's based on a preference.
Yeah, but why is that wrong?
It's preferential. Somebody could just prefer something else.
Sure, they could, and we can have equally strong passions about our completely different views.
Sure, but when you're acting,
is there an objectively better football team to cheer for? No, but
No, but I think that they're objective moral facts, right? Like your passion isn't in line with your claimed reality. Because if it's just preference, right, then essentially you acting as though this something is true and you're right in it and your rightness is down into your bones. It's like you're acting as though this is objectively the case, while simultaneously on the other side of your mouth saying, but it's only subjectively a preference. Your anger isn't justified.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So let me actually...
It's just biological software.
Tiny...
I'm just saying, your passion isn't in line with reality. It's just biological software that you can't help yourself against, basically.
Yeah. So
that's the irrationality that I'm asking for.
I guess because your functionality argument, I think, is generally strong. And obviously, it's going to land with more people than my subjectivity argument is going to be. Just period.
Yeah, because objectivity is intuitive. Like I said, I get that.
Yeah.
W's.
Yeah. But so, like, I grew up like in a really 97% white, homophobic, racist, really terrible area, right? And I guess part of the reason why I'm so insistent on, like, even though it's hard to understand, even though it seems on the surface very similar to objectivism, I guess I just have like this internal fear or claim against the idea of like, oh, there's some objective truth, because once people convince themselves that there is objective truth and that they have the objective truth, that's all there is to it. I feel, I guess there's an inherent sense of more responsibility, and maybe this is just me, but thinking that like I'm having to impose myself, my views on other people, and there's no objective thing that I can appeal to say this is why you must follow or you must actually believe this same thing. I guess I just take more responsibility in it to like figure out why I am right about this and why my values should be enforced on somebody else, in comparison to the Christian nationalist view of like my parents, where it's like, well, this is what God says and we know what God says, and therefore we're objectively right and we don't have to think about anything and we're going to force everybody.
Sure.
Like I guess it feels more inherently pluralistic to me.
I don't know if I would agree it's necessarily. So it would be more pluralistic than like a Christian absolutist, but I'm not a Christian absolutist. I'm an objectivist,
sure, but
not an absolutist. I think there are objectively true things about morality, but the way that it plays out is necessarily contextual and relative. Right? Like in my system, like I think part of why I think moral objectivity is compelling. And just so it's clear, I'm not trying to convince you to be an objectivist or a subjectivist.
Sure. Yeah,
I don't
we're
care.
having a conversation.
I'm agnostic. Well, most importantly, I don't care. I don't care what system that you like arrive at necessarily, right? Because I think I can't solve Agrippa's trilemma for my own system, right? But I'm basically advocating why I think these things matter, right? In the case of having like some sort of objective morality, I get to sit here and I say, not mine, but the proverbial my racist, homophobic, meanie, asshole relatives are objectively wrong. They just don't know it. And they're not just wrong objectively. They're wrong by their own standards because Jesus loved everyone and they're full of hate. And I get to do this not just because I'm an objectivist, but also I believe in God, right? And so I'm like, Jesus loved everyone. And they're full of hatred, which is why they are sinful. They are sinful, and sinful will be morally bad. They're acting as morally bad actors, right? And I like get to like steal that passion. Whereas I think subjectivists can still have all this passion and all these sort of things. They just fundamentally get stuck in some of the positions of having to admit their irrationality earlier than like objectivists have to. Even though I would agree at the core level, I'm still assuming God. Like I'm still assuming God is God and God exists.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me that you're a theist of some degree, or a deist at least.
Theist. I would say theist. Yeah, I'm a Christian.
It'd be fun to have a conversation about that another time. But thank you for indulging me on this side tangent. I never get to talk about this.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming on, and thanks for. I know you're brand new, so I appreciate you tuning in.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.